We are back live at the Collision Hub World's Fair. Hey, this is our last show of the day.
This is like the 47th show this week.
I thought it was like the 47th show today.
Oh, it feels that way. Okay.
But it's our last one. We got an early day today.
Yeah.
So as soon as we're done with this, Larry,
It's not
Wow, it's
we're
4
out of
a.m.
here. So take a hint.
Well, 3 a.m.
3
Wow.
a.m. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
Drank too
we're
much
going to
yesterday.
talk about making practice welds, quality practice welds. And I'm kind of excited about this one because throughout here we're going to talk about some tips that we've got for it. And then we're going to talk about the Collision Hub OEM Welding Validation Program and how it relates to our practice welds on here. And so I'm pretty excited about that. So we got some good tips for you and a couple of ideas that we've come up with for how to make quality practice welds. So I mean, let's just dive right into it, right?
Well, I just want to say, so I'm excited about this too.
Yeah, you are.
Well, yeah, because when we go into shops,
Yeah.
you know, and we go into shops, we say, well, did you do a practice weld? And then they say, what's that? Or no, we didn't. Or yeah, you know, we got one right here, but it's only one weld and not destroyed and all that. And then we have to explain.
Yeah.
And when this video's done, then I can just say, you know, I don't want to sit here for the next hour and explain practice welds to you. Here's a link.
I like it.
This is how you do
I like
and
it.
test
So
welds.
share this with everybody then.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Okay, cool. You know, before we jump into it, so this morning we talked about what makes a good weld, right? Good weld, bad weld, heat adjustments, gun technique, proper electrical wire, making sure that you get the proper thickness, so the aluminum, make sure we get the proper alloys, etc. One thing we talked about was the Honda high-strength steel wire, the Bowler wire, the formerly the Bosch wire, and we promised you we would do some research and come back with an answer on whether it's allowable to use that on other weld joints of lower strength. So remember, up to 440 ER70S6, up to 980, the high-strength steel wire, and then the 1500 is spot weld and MIG braze only.
Yep.
But can I use that high-strength steel up to 990 wire on 440 or 280 or something like that? The answer is yes, but given the expense of the electrical wire, the high-strength steel wire, not advisable to do that. So again, if you do need to be making some welds with that Bowler wire, use that only on those areas that call for it is probably a
fine,
good.
but it's just going to cost more money.
Exactly. Yeah, it'll work. The performance-wise, everything's good there.
Yep.
But you want to make sure that that you're saving a couple bucks too.
Yeah, well, and it's
So,
expensive.
yeah, it's not very. It isn't inexpensive. That's
Right.
for sure. So, okay, so let's dive into some welds. I'm gonna give you guys a pop quiz. I didn't tell them that this was coming.
Okay.
This legit. They had no idea this time.
Wait,
So
wait,
usually
put
we
your phone out. We
yeah.
can ask Siri.
No, don't ask Siri. Okay, so we're looking at a procedure here, all right, from a vehicle manufacturer.
Yep.
This happens to be from General Motors.
Yep.
It's it looks like a quarter panel.
It does, yes.
And it says if MIG mag is going to be used, drill 8mm plug weld holes as necessary in locations noted in the original body side panel. So if we're going to be putting on 8mm plug weld holes into our quarter panel, what size plug welds should I use for my practice welds?
Let me think. Okay,
35.
You got to carry a 1.
12.
And all that. I'm going to go with 8.
Pi
Final answer.
times
8 is
3
correct.
Oh, okay.
It
I
is
was trying to
true.
figure it out.
Well, the Jeopardy, we're just talking about Aaron
I didn't hear
Rodgers.
him. I didn't.
No. What is 8?
What is
What-
8?
there we
What
go.
is
You're
8?
wrong.
No,
What
it
is 8? I'm right.
Yeah, so we want to make 8mm plug welds
Right.
in a panel. And if that material is, let's say, well, how thick is this? How thick is this part? Let's say we were putting those let's say 6mm because this is pretty thin material. So if I'm putting a 6mm plug weld into 20 gauge material on my replacement part, 6mm plug weld like we got here, what size plug weld should I use?
A 6.
A 6?
No, 6, yeah.
6mm.
Nope.
And
Almost wrong.
Wait.
What is 6?
Okay.
Very
I
good.
messed up the phrasing.
I won.
Yep.
And if my OE part that I'm going to be putting on the vehicle is 20 gauge, what thickness of material should I use to make my practice welds?
Oh, geez. 20.
What is 20?
See, I keep
Correct.
losing.
See, Larry,
Go.
I just, you know.
Larry,
I'm gonna get this. I'm
congratulations,
gonna
you
get this.
won. It's over.
There you go. See?
You,
Gotta learn the rules.
You're in the negative, so only he goes
Yeah.
to Final Jeopardy, which means he wins.
Now, here's the thing. Do I just lose 0 when I walk away, or do I have to write a check for the difference?
Now you gotta write a check. How much better would game shows be? Like if you lost and you went into negative numbers, you actually had to pay them back.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. I think
Nobody would answer.
So, like we talked about this morning, like having some coupons that we've got laying around that are 16 or 18 or 22 gauge, it's great to kind of maintain your skills and make sure that, you know, you're comfortable. You know what, like this 18 gauge open butt joint on here, you know what, I'm pretty dialed in on that. But now I want to move to, you know, my actual OEM material that I'm going to be making the welds on. And now this is certainly thinner, so if I'm going to be welding an open butt joint, this means like a Toyota quarter panel, a good example for that, an open butt joint. I want to make sure that I've got the same material for that, so I can make my butt joint, I can get my root gap exactly where I want to get it. I can, you know, make sure that I've got, you know, everything lined up, fitted up properly, and get my welds really, you know, the welds are dialed in, get my technique dialed in, my heat control dialed in before I go do that on the car.
Yeah, so I guess the rule then, from this morning's show till now, is if we're going to be doing this, really good for tuning our welder, getting used to our welder, kind of, you know, like riding the bike, you get familiar with it.
Yep.
But then we got to go to the next step, which is this afternoon's show, which is actually off the car, the same type of stuff, so that we can dial it in for that car.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And if we look at, you know, we talk about iCar and their welding program they've got, and every iCar course that's out there talking about welding, it says make practice welds on the same type and thickness of material in the same position.
Yep.
So if I'm going to make vertical welds, I'm going to make vertical practice welds on that material. If I'm going to make an overhead weld, flat, whatever. So if I've got, let's say, a rocker panel, I'm going to have some overhead welds potentially. I'm going to have some vertical welds. I'm going to have some flat welds kind of potentially. So I want to make sure that I'm testing each one of those out.
You got a horizontal weld.
And they got a B-pillar. Yeah, so we're going to across here. We're going to have a horizontal.
The bottom line is, say that we're welding across the top. You know, so that's the you know, just the horizontal weld.
Yep.
Okay. So I would do that weld test. Then I would actually do it on the car.
Yeah.
Then I would say, okay, now I got a vertical. So I do my vertical weld test and destruct and all that, and then come back and do that. And then I'm going to do my overhead, so I do my overhead test. So this isn't tune the welder up and get welding on the car. This is make one weld or a continuous weld or a few plug welds, stop, go back, and redo. So you don't do all your test welds in the beginning, you do them in the process.
Yep. You know, so I'm on the National Skills USA competition committee, and I'm part of the attachment methods. Formerly the welding segment's now called attachment methods because we've gone beyond just welding. We've got riveting, rivet bonding. Anyways, every year we see contestants come there and we give them some practice coupons, and then when they're ready, they turn those in and we give them their test coupons. So they go over and they get they make their, you know, thin to thin and their thin to thick and their thick to thick or whatever combination of welds they need to make, and they get everything dialed in. And let's say they end with a thin to thin or thick to thick, whichever one. And then they go, hey, I'm ready for my test welds, or for my test coupons, and we give them their stack of test coupons, and they go back and they make all the welds with the same settings. They get it all dialed in, but they only dial into they forget.
So they get that one weld really good.
Right.
Yeah.
So same scenario you're talking about here. Like, let's make sure that because we may have a situation where maybe the backing part on the lower, on your vertical, maybe is thinner or thicker than the horizontal that's up here. Or maybe it's an open butt joint here and a butt joint back. I mean, any combination, but we want to make sure we're testing each and every joint, same type, same thickness, same position, all around the board.
And then if you look at the rocker panel there, you've got, some of them are 2-layer.
Yep.
And some of them are 3-layer. So we're going to have to do that combination on the mag weld.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know, and another benefit of, again, practice vehicle, we talked about heat control this morning. There's another opportunity to control your heat a little bit more. If I can make a couple of welds here, maybe some plug welds, go back and forth, I can spread it. You're kind of doing a skip welding technique by infusing the practice welding into it as well at the same time.
Yeah, and so I can just hear or see a whole bunch of technicians right now rolling their eyes going, you mean to tell me, and I'm not getting paid for that, but if we talk to Danny, what would Danny say?
You should be getting compensated.
It's not
for it.
included.
Not included.
It's not included.
Yeah. And if you need evidence of that, again, go to degweb.org, do a search for welding or practice welds, see the results, and if you can't find anything, submit an inquiry.
Yeah. So, and then you got to do every setup. So the meg welds on, you know, it might be an overhead, it might be a horizontal, it might be a vertical, you know, wherever it is, and then on top of that, it might be different layers. So you might on a quarter panel have 6, 7, 8, 9 different test welds.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we covered this one as well. So again, I want to show this screen because again, here's another vehicle manufacturer that's telling us based on the material thickness, here's the plug weld hole size you should be using. Same thing again. If we're welding on these different materials, the governing metal thickness, we want to make sure that we have the appropriate diameter of plug weld based on that OEM requirement.
Yep.
So let's talk about like where am I going to get these parts? Like you're telling me that I should be making practice welds on the same type and thickness of material. We talked this morning about, well, I can't go out and buy DP600 because it only comes in massive rolls.
Well, you can buy it.
Well, you can. You can buy it and put on Nick's private jet or 747, right?
Exactly.
So
Collision up credit card.
where am I going to get these parts from?
Cars.
Cars. Well, that was a conversation. You know, Mark and I, we had a conversation earlier. It's like, you know, every collision damage vehicle that you're working on might have some parts on it that you could use for the future. So we've got a couple examples. So we got one here. So this is one sample. Just a panel. We got a 2018 Malibu roof here. We had a wrecked Malibu. We did our repairs on it. We had to replace the roof. So we took the old roof, we just got it here, we got to put some tape on it, keep it a little bit more protected on it.
Yeah,
and we can file this for later. So if I need to come back at a later date and cut some coupons out of here, we can do that. We've also got a nice little bin here. So we got a bin here, so I could have a Stellantis bin and a Honda bin and a Ford bin or multiple ones or whatever. In here we've got a 2015 Dodge Dart. So you can see here we worked on a pillar and we got some scrap material from it. So I had to buy a whole uniside. And I only put in the rocker panel.
Right.
And so I've got a quarter panel and a B pillar and a roof rail. Well, rather than throwing that away, let's put it, file it, or these are coupons that were made out of that same part. So I could again make the weld joints that I wanted to make and prep it, and I could just cut these out as I need them. File this in here. We did an open butt joint on it just for a little practice on this particular one. So just keep the coupons around, and even. These are with the Dart, so it would have been in the same bin that we've got. So we've got a few of those. You can see here we made some practice welds with our Dodge Dart material, making a plug weld on that. We've got a fillet weld here. So again, whatever weld joints you need, use the material that you've got, or take those rec. Now the rec panels, that's one way to do it. But now you've got some damaged sheet metal. It might be a little bit more difficult to kind of fit it up or whatever. Whereas if you've got that uniside that you're not using, that works great. Now the other thing that we've talked about using is we've finally found a use for some recycled structural parts here, right? So we've got a Honda Accord B-pillar here. So we have saved an Accord somewhere by getting this B-pillar here, because this will never go in a collision damage
It'll never
Honda.
be rebuilt.
It'll never be rebuilt with this particular vehicle anymore,
It
right?
came with an airbag sensor that we have.
And a VIN
We have to
label.
keep that.
We could put that on eBay.
Yes.
And a
you go.
VIN
All right.
label, so we're good.
And a VIN label. Ooh,
yeah.
even better. So now I can do a ton of welding on this thing, right? So we talked earlier about MIG brazing on Honda vehicles, right? So you can see on the screen here we've got that 1500 MPa B-pillar reinforcement that runs, all the way from the rocker panel area all the way up. It's got a number of MIG braze welds required down in the lower part of the B-pillar, as well as in the upper part of the B-pillar. So anywhere the spot welding arms can't reach on this vehicle, such as our lower B-pillar area behind the rocker panel, MIG brazing is required. So again, no steel welding, even with the high-strength steel wire. It has to be MIG braze or it has to be spot welded. Now we've got a vehicle here, and again, even if I've got this vehicle, so you look at, we've got 2, 4, 6, 7, just a handful of MIG slot welds on here. But notice there's an area above that and below that, and we've got a large area that we can actually make, probably a dozen or 15 up there, another 10 or so up here. So we can make a ton of MIG braze welds on it. We can make a bunch of spot welds on it. We can make plug welds on it. We can do whatever we need to. If there's a sectioning procedure on the outer that calls for a particular type of weld, we can do all that. So now I've got a piece here. Now granted, we just got this. It's a big chunk. I'm not going to probably want to store this whole thing around, but I can take the floor out.
And it's not going to fit in the bin.
It won't. Well, we just need a bigger bin.
Yeah.
Or we'll just cut up in little tiny pieces or melt it down.
No, but one of the hardest problems is that if you are going to put a B-pillar, an outer, a rocker, etc., on a vehicle, getting the outer is easy because you replace those.
Yeah.
Right.
But what about all the inner stuff?
Yeah.
And that's where the higher strength steels are.
Yep.
Such that we're not doing a lot of cutting those off cars.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but not a lot. So if you can get a hold of used parts like this,
Sure.
and then start cutting those apart, that's what you're going to need to use for your weld test.
And even like if you look at the cross section too, it gives us a good
I
idea
don't know
of
if you
what
can turn
it
that so the camera can see.
looks
it, 'cause
us.
it's-
Well,
it's
yeah,
right in
I
there.
don't want the thing to fall off.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Avery and I put that on there, so I don't really trust it.
Yeah,
boy.
okay.
So,
Okay.
but we could see again, even from a corrosion protection standpoint, if that's just another thing we could do on this particular vehicle, like, oh, if I'm going to put some schmutz in that rocker panel, what would that look like? Well, here I can see any
write that down.
inserts or any
Schmutz.
schmutz. That's a Steve Marks term.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Steve Marks one there. So thanks for that, Steve. Yeah, so that's a great resource for recycle part. The only resource for a recycle part is for making some practice welds on it. So
Well, and that's the other question that we get is like, well, how am I supposed to do a practice weld on the same kind of metal if I don't have the same kind of metal and it's still on the car? That's how you do it.
There you go. Here, like I said, the unisides are great, right? Because like I said,
it's got a lot of pieces.
there's services and assemblies so often,
Yeah.
and we replace them so often, and we're always throwing scrap material. Now, if it's a lower rail, maybe we don't have as much laying around. For that, we might need a recycle part, or again, that damaged one. But even like if we take a look at our Nissan we talked about yesterday with Jake, right? And the Select guys the day before, we need to replace both lower rails on that vehicle. There is no sectioning procedure, but we
portion.
Right.
So we got the rest of the rail.
We got the rest of the
that
rail.
has reinforcements and stuff like that in
right.
there.
And it's largely undamaged. It's swayed over, but it's not rolled up in a ball.
Right.
And it requires plug wells back near the cowl on it. So again, we've got a whole part here that we can cut up, match, and make our plug welds on it. So, okay, cool. All right. So now we're going to dive into a little bit on the Collision Hub OEM Welding Validation Program. I'm going to walk you guys through a little bit about what it is and its importance and why we did it, and just kind of see how it correlates to our practice welds that we've got here. So the Collision Hub OEM Weld Validation Program consists of four programs essentially. It consists of an online kind of a basic course that walks you through how to make basic welds, like we talked about this morning, setting the machine up, changing the drive rolls, what's the contact tip, how do I know what electrode wire to use, kind of the collision repair welding 101. And that then is followed up with an OEM specific welding program, online program, that teaches you how to find the OEM requirements. So you remember earlier we had that quarter panel with the GM overlap and the plug welds that were called for. Where do I find that information? So we walk the student through the program how to find that for each individual OEM. So if I'm taking the GM welding validation program, that's what we cover. If it's the Stellantis welding program, that's what we cover, Honda, so on and so forth. So they're all individual courses that we deal with on that. But it walks them through how to find the information on how to make the welds, what size plug weld, like we looked at the Hyundai, with all the different variables. Where do I find that information? How do I know? All the questions that we get on a regular basis. Hey, I'm trying to find out what this material is made of, what the plug, what electrodes wires required. So that's why we put that program together.
And this is the part of the blueprinting to get all the information for repairing the vehicle. That's part of all that.
Yep. Yeah, and the reason we put this whole thing together is because we saw, as we've gone out to shops, we've seen failure after failure, unfortunately.
Pretty bad.
And from technicians who have been trained and have some type of a welding credential too often. And so that's why we put this program together, because a lot of times, maybe they can weld on a nice clean coupon, but maybe they've never really been trained on how to make a weld on a collision damaged vehicle.
Right.
So we want to kind of walk them through that and again use the actual material that they're going to be welding on. So following those two online courses, what we do is we set up a virtual coaching session with that technician. Now, depending on the experience of the technician, how comfortable they are, that might be a half an hour, 45 minutes. It might be a couple of 1 or 2 hour sessions potentially if they're a little bit less familiar with it. But we walk them through the tuning of the machine. Hey, do you know how to change drive rolls on it? Do you know how to set this up? We walk them through that. We'll pair them with a coach that's familiar with that equipment. So again, if it's a shop that maybe is using the Select welding equipment that we had here, we can put a coach that's familiar with the Select equipment, or a Miller equipment, or a Fronius, or whatever the equipment is. Yep. And we'll walk them through and we'll coach them up on the OEM material. So again, you can see here. Are you
flying to the shop to do this, or how are you doing this?
We're doing this all virtually. So this is one thing that I think is really cool about the program, is we set the program up for them, and when they register, we send them a box, a welcome package, if you will. And when they open up that box, there's a little QR code on there. They take their phone, they zap the QR code, and it brings up 4 videos. The first video is just a welcome video of kind of what to expect, how to prepare your weld coupons in advance, safety gear, everything you need to, because we don't want to waste our time, we don't want to waste their time by going like, okay, Mark, go get some pliers, now go get some side cutting pliers.
Right.
We want to take that out. We want to make sure they've got
They're
everything that they need when they're ready to go. So that's the first video, just kind of a welcome video on how to prepare for it. The second video is how to pair their new Bluetooth headphones that we send them with their phone. The Bluetooth headphones allow the coach to talk to the technician as they're making their practice welds. So like we talked about earlier this morning, when I was having troubles when I got that porosity, had you seen me angling my gun rather than traveling vertically, you could say,
lift the shoulder.
You could say, Jason, you're turning the torch again, or if you would have seen me pointing that weld joint into the wrong part of the joint, you can say, hey, adjust your gun angle.
Perpendicular.
I can watch that on here. We can see them making the weld. Now this one, he's kind of in front of it right now, but there's a video that I had with another student where I can see the backside. I can see you're running way too hot. Turn that temperature down. So we can coach them virtually on it from afar, and I just love that two-way communication. I can hear them, they can hear me. We can talk while they're welding. It works, it's pretty cool. The third video is just a video on how to set up their phone stand. So we send them a stand that they can clamp their phone into, attach it to a table, and they can position it just like our student has here. That's on a bench or something he's got set up, and he's directing that camera, his phone, right at it. And then the last video is just a video on how to download the Zoom meeting application on an iPhone or an Android device so that you can actually launch the meeting. So, but yeah, it's all done virtually.
So they're welding, and you're sitting there riding a shotgun with them.
Yep.
With right there, live, anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I mean, Colin here is out in Pennsylvania. I'm in the Arkansas studio here, and we're doing some weld training from a few hundred miles apart.
Cool.
You know, so it is really cool. And the thing that the technicians really like about it is it's OEM specific, and it's that one-on-one coaching part of it. And that the thing that the OEs that we've talked to like about it is the same thing. It's always specific. We're using the OE. So he's already pulled. He happens to be welding on a Nissan Frontier rocker panel in this coaching session. He pulled the procedures in advance and said it's like a cooking show. Like, hey, welcome to this welding show. Today we're going to be making an open butt joint on 0.6 mil, with 024 electrode wire. And it just kind of walked through the whole program. So they have the student explain to us based on the procedure that they've got what they're going to be doing during the coaching session. And then once both the technician and our coach are comfortable that, you know what, you've done a good job, Mark, you're ready to go, we sign up, we start doing we pick a date for your actual welding validation test. You don't just make your practice welds and then jump right into it. We want you to practice. The other thing that we do is if you're not quite ready, I'll send you and your manager an email saying, hey, great job today, Mark. However, here's a few things that we talked about that I want you to work on. I want you to slow down on your open butt joint or speed up. I want you to do this. So it gives you some practice tips. So here's the things that I want you to work on. Let's schedule a follow-up coaching session.
And then I'm going to come up, and then we'll schedule a follow-up. You'll say, okay, you got it. And then we're going to schedule you for your actual validation.
Absolutely. Right. And then once we do the welding validation part of it, same thing. We're going to pull a procedure, and you're going to say, these are the welds we'll be making today. So I'm going to be making a 6mm plug weld on 20 gauge material in the vertical position, overhead position, whatever positions we need to, and with the procedure. And then we make the weld, and you got one chance. It's not go back. Nope, that one's not good enough. Go back and do it again. Nope, that one's not good enough. Go back and do it again. You got one chance to do it.
Why are you doing just one chance, not giving them 4 shots?
Well, it's kind of like the car, right? So we expect them when we get on that call, we're expecting them to have the welder tuned in and be ready to go. They've got all their numbers are all written down. I know I need to be here. If they want to say, hey, I got to make a plug weld, I don't make a fillet weld, and they want to, like, give me a couple minutes to fine tune the welder again after moving from joint to joint, like we just got done talking about, that's awesome. But yeah, you got one chance.
Well, you would want them to do that, wouldn't you?
What's that?
You want them to do the practice weld right before they.
You know what? If they don't, then we didn't do a very good job of coaching them, right?
Exactly.
So then we will visually inspect it. So if the OEM has got some visual inspection or destructive testing criteria, that's the criteria that we'll use. We'll do a twist test or a peel test. We may do a destructive test on the fillet weld or the butt joint with backing. So again,
and you walk them through all that too.
Walk them through all that, exactly what they're supposed to be doing to make sure that they're getting the welds the way they want them to get it done.
So they kind of know right then, pass fail.
Yeah.
They're not waiting for you to
No.
mail the coupons in and
No.
come back later and.
No, and I love the idea of like having a CWI that would inspect the welds
Right.
and go through that whole process. And but the CWIs are typically dealing with heavier gauge material. They don't know the OE procedures. They don't know what the OES testing parameters.
Just so you guys know, that's certified welding inspector.
Thank you. My apologies. Thank you for that. But yeah, so it's like I said, it's a pretty cool program, and it's been well received. And the OEs that we've been meeting with right now, they're really digging it, and the technicians have been digging it as well. So we're still doing some beta testing with a few others.
So one more. Another question. I'm not
Yeah.
going to say one more because you might
No,
say
dear.
there's no more questions.
No,
but,
you're good.
So you said it's OE specific. So say we're
Yeah.
doing a Nissan,
Yep.
and so we know we're doing a Nissan. So you get kind of, I don't know what the term is, certified, qualified.
We're just calling it an
Validated.
OEM welding validation
Okay,
test.
so it's
yeah.
validated on Nissan.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Right.
But that doesn't mean GM.
Correct.
So now they say, okay, I need my GM now,
Yep.
and I need my Ford, and
Yep.
I need my
Yep.
Stellantis, and I need
Yep.
my, okay.
Yeah, so what we'll do is then you've already taken the basic course.
Yeah.
You've already been through the coaching, so we know that you know what you're supposed to do, and you've proven to us that you can make OEM welds. But what we'll do is we'll put that GM specific online course in your library,
Yep.
and then we'll do a GM validation test afterwards. And one thing I failed to mention with that online course, the OEM specific, we'll ask you which make, model, year, type of equipment, what will you be using on that cooking show? What will you be using,
Yep.
so that again we can pair a coach that's familiar with that equipment, that we can pull the procedure and value. Because if I just go like, hey Mark, see this procedure? I'm going to make an 8mm plug weld.
Yeah.
So we pull that procedure in advance so that we, as the coach, know what they're going to be welding on as well.
Yeah, so ultimately they're going to wind up with a validation of General Motors and Honda, and
Yeah, that's
all
the goal.
different
Yep.
OEMs. Yeah,
Yeah,
awesome.
it's a good capstone to really give the OEs and the shops and the technician that that I've not only been trained and vetted by other industry organizations, but I've proven that I can make the required welds on this particular model.
So before we get off of this, so if
Yeah.
they want to get involved in this, how do they do that?
Yeah, go to collisionhub.com, go to the store and sign up. The GM course is launched. It's available. It's $449.
That's a lot cheaper than other ones.
It's pretty inexpensive. There's no travel invested.
Right.
And the other thing I think I kind of like about it is like we've all been inside shops. So what happens when you walk in a shop? Well, it takes you an hour before you even get into the shop, right? Because
Yeah.
you're having a conversation. Then you have a hey, good to see you again. And
then
next thing you know,
interruptions.
Next thing you know, you've been there for 4 hours and you haven't made a weld yet.
Right.
These guys, when they get
Doesn't
on
waste
there,
time.
we're ready to go. They got everything that they need. They're not running around. They're set to go. So I think it's pretty cool.
So another question.
No,
So
you're good.
let's say that they want to do the GM, they've
Yep.
done the online training, they've done
Yep.
the coaching, all that, and they got their appointment now
Yep.
to do their validation.
Yep.
So by the time that they start the validation until they're done with the validation, what does that look like? Is that a 6-hour deal, a 2-hour deal, 10-minute deal? How much
Well,
time
the
is that?
validation part of it should be fairly short, right?
Yeah.
Because I've got my welder tuned for my first weld.
Yep.
I'm going to make that weld. We're going to visually inspect it together, destructively test it together.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go back. I'm going to make a couple tweaks to make sure that I'm ready for my second weld.
Yep.
Same thing, whether it's 2, 3, 4. Depends how many weld joints you're going to have to make for that particular procedure that they pulled. The one that I did with Stark, I mean, we were on the phone for 15 minutes
Yeah.
for the validation part of it.
Yeah.
And again, because he was an experienced welder, the coaching part of it, that was pretty short as well. I worked with a couple other students that took a little bit more time. We went through the coaching session. I sent them that email saying, these are the things I want you to work on. We'll follow
The
back
other
up, we'll
advantage
do
of
it
this thing
again.
is obviously you're not taking that skilled technician off the floor
Right.
for hours and hours
Yeah.
to kill your production. It's just in and out.
Yeah,
What
we
do got?
want to we want to validate that they can make the required welds.
Yeah.
We're not saying, well, we need to spend X amount of time
Yeah.
here. We want to just get them through the program if they can weld. And again, the goal would be that like we don't have any failures because they've been coached up and they're ready to go, and that we've done a good job. So if I just go like, I don't really, you know what? Yeah, let's do the testing next week, Mark. And Mark's not ready to go. That's on me. We need to
And
both
what's cool,
agree
I
that
think,
we're ready.
and correct me if I'm wrong, you got videos of all this.
Yeah,
So you could actually go, wait a minute, one of your coaches, you could,
Yep.
wait a minute. He wasn't ready.
Yeah, that's
So you
a
can
great point.
recalibrate.
Yep, we record every session. Now we don't just send those out every time, right? but we can use it from an audit standpoint. If we need to go back and say, how did Mark pass that test? He can't weld. Well, we can go pull the footage and watch Mark. Or same thing, if Jason's doing something he's not supposed to do from a welding validation standpoint, that coach isn't doing it, they're responsible for. We can go back and watch that, and then we can have that conversation with him. No, so we're not picking on you. It's all he can't weld, I can't coach. You're in the clear this afternoon. We got you all taken care of.
Well, did you see his weld coupons earlier from the Mercedes thing?
That's why I'm not.
Yeah, we can't screw it.
Yeah, we can't.
I'm just staying quiet. Let you guys kill each other.
But yeah, you can definitely we can pull
Now
it.
you say I can't weld, and the truth is I haven't welded a car for a while, but I did weld a fender on my tractor about a month ago.
Close enough.
And it hasn't fallen off yet, so I'm
Okay,
good.
so you're now John Deere validated?
No, no.
Is it Kubota?
New Holland.
New Holland.
New
Okay.
Holland.
All right. Cool. And so you asked about the prices. So $449 for the first OEM. You want to add a second, third, fourth OEM. It's $149 per OEM after that. Same thing. If you happen to fail the test, $149 for a retest. So, yeah, collisionhub.com. Check that out. If you got questions on it, give me a shout. We'd love to.
I've heard
talk to you
nothing
more
but
about
good about it.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's a pretty cool program. Like I said, I love the fact that it's OEM material,
Yep.
OEM procedures, and we're doing what the OEMs want us to do on those parts. So pretty cool. All right, one thing that we didn't talk about when we talked about practice welds earlier is another tool that a lot of technicians either don't use or are too ashamed to use. And this little $2 purchase right here can make a world of difference. You had yours somewhere.
No, right here.
But if I'm having trouble seeing now, when I put that, I can see that.
now.
So
Now I see why it didn't pass.
for a couple bucks, it's
Yeah, if you have to squint down in any way to read your smartphone, you probably should have glasses on when you're welding.
that's why
Reading glasses.
That's why these are my personal.
Those are yours.
These
Those are
my
nice.
So this isn't correct
No.
to try and read the phone? Oh.
You've got I've seen your font and you're like size 48 font on that
But
thing.
you can only
right?
give like
There's two
3 letters
names.
on there at
Yeah.
a time, and you scroll
He
it.
can see who the person was, and that's about it.
When I dial, I got to hit one button, turn, hit another button, turn, hit another button.
All right, so let's go to spot welding for just a little bit here. So let's talk about practice welds with spot welding. Any differences between the practice process between spot welding and MIG welding?
Well, I think we need to make a distinction because we've been tossing around the term practice and test.
Yeah.
So this is practice welding.
Okay.
To tune your welder up so you know how to use your welder. And then these are test welds so that we can set it up and destruct it to make sure we're ready to actually weld on the car.
Yeah, there's definitely
There's a distinction
some
there.
terminology there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then we've got our validation test on top of that.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, we're talking about this is like training. So
Yeah.
it's basically your
Yeah.
training,
Training weld.
practice, test, or something like
exactly.
that. So we have to come up with some
We
new.
keep interchangeably using that, and they're not the same.
We'll get the definitions committee on that
Yeah,
and see if
yeah,
we can.
yeah.
We can.
Let's form a committee so nothing gets done.
Yeah.
There you go.
Put you in charge of it.
But the same thing applies for spot welding, aluminum welding, MIG brazing, whatever. Same thing with spot welding. So we've got our Honda chart here. So again, we've got our 31 different weld parameters. And I may need 5 different welding parameters
Right.
on my B pillar. Again, I want to test each one of those. I want to make my practice, do we decide? I want to make my test welds.
test weld.
And then go on the
And your
car,
validation's the
on the,
destructive piece,
on the vehicle,
Yep.
and make the weld on the vehicle. Then come back and make my number 2 configuration back to the car. So nothing's changed there.
No.
If I'm going to be doing weld bonding, I want to do the same thing. I want to do same type, thickness. I want to do the preparation steps. I want to make sure my adhesive times are all the same. I want to clamp it. I mean, again, we want to do everything the same so that we know that we've got a consistent process down to duplicate those welds that are in there. We're going to need to shunt the first weld if we're doing weld bonding. We're going to want to isolate or protect our clamps if we're not going to be doing, we don't want another shunting going on.
Right.
So again, we want to make sure that we're doing the exact same thing that we're going to do on that vehicle. All right, cool. Anything with spot welding, or I mean, again, we're just talking about it's more about a process than it really is a training program as far as like how to teach how to make it. Are there any process steps that we miss with MIG, spot?
I think we covered a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff in the last class. I mean, you know, these two should be watched together, and we didn't put them together because it'd be a 3-hour program.
Right.
So watch them separately, rewatch them. I mean, we hit a lot about, and not to reiterate everything, but it's keep everything
don't
clean.
do that, right?
Yeah,
Clean.
Just
Yep.
clean. Just keep everything clean. Obviously, having the right proper mask, the proper gloves, and even the jacket. You know, you're welding aluminum, you're going to have probably TIG welding gloves, at least on your resting hand that's close to the weld, not your trigger hand, because it gets so hot and radiates off. And there's probably some guys out there that have taken the ISO test and laugh. The 300 millimeter weld, you can't wear regular weld gloves. You'll stop in between. Your hand gets so hot, it's baking.
Yeah.
Like a baked potato in an oven. You know what I mean? It gets that hot. So you have to wear a thicker glove, like a TIG glove, on that, and as you weld, they have like these protectors that can go on top. But anything else, you can wear regular weld gloves. Obviously, have your eyeglasses on. Don't break anything until it's cool.
Yeah.
Don't quick cool anything with
Right.
air or water.
Yep.
Let it naturally cool. And then as far as spot welds go, also keep everything clean. If you're using, you know, adhesive material, use the same adhesive material on your practicing weld setting welds.
Yep.
However we're going to terminology that. As far as the C-clamp and piston type jaws, the different sizes go, if you're using a small one and then like the medium one, I don't think there's really a necessity to have different ones, because they say no matter what size, it's going to be the same pressure. But if I'm using the small one and then I got like a bedside panel, I'm going to use the small one, the small C-clamp, and then all of a sudden I'm going to bring up the 600 millimeter one and be like, maybe I should just take 1 or 2 test welds.
Yeah.
Also to get kind of like a little practice with holding this thing. Maybe I need somebody else helping me with it. If you have like the Fender rolled one that like is an angle, so it's kind of like an X-type thing, or an open clamping type one, and they're on angles, and like it's, instead of being a tip, it's like a round little ball on there. I would
45,
practice.
yeah.
The 45, I'd practice on 1 or 2 of those, and then destructively test it as per the way the manufacturer would want you to. Take pictures. I would say put, like, you know, you have one of these here. You put the RO number on both of these, you know, and then you destructively test it. You lay it down. You take a picture of it.
Actually, it would be these,
Well, those, yeah, excuse me, these.
not those.
Because I don't have these. Okay, so
Well, unless you're welding on this vehicle.
Yeah,
you
the
know,
car.
you go ahead and you put your RO number on these. You break it apart, and well, we do have one as well. You have a rip out on this lap-on fillet weld. You would take a picture of it, and then you could throw these out. You don't have to keep them. You know, so now I have a picture of
the picture in the file.
Put the picture in the file and stuff, and then take this, and you can get rid of those, so you don't have a box of too much stuff laying around.
Back to the bulletproof
But
file.
yeah, bulletproof file. It just, you know, this is just some of the stuff. It's a little annoying until you get practiced into it, but it'll save you untold amount of time once you get to the vehicle and not making mistakes, and it'll make you a better welder, and it'll make you a better dresser of welds, which means you'll have less filler on everything.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's, you want to go through the same routine and the same process. That's really, I mean, you watch a professional golfer on the driving range, they don't just walk up and start whacking balls, right? Like every shot, they've got their pre-shot routine. They're doing the same thing. It's building in that muscle memory and everything else. This is no different.
Same thing as
This
somebody
is
shooting a free throw in
this
the
is
NBA.
exactly.
Yep.
That's why you practice. This is our job. Is this is our 300-yard drive right here? Well, 340 these days, but but nonetheless, I mean, this is what we're supposed to be doing. This is the way that a professional collision repair technician should act.
Right.
Is to do the right thing and make their practice welds, their test welds.
There's the practice welds, and then there are test welds.
Test welds, and then
then
our
their validation
validated
when you
welds.
take it
All right,
apart.
there you go. But they had practice makes.
Write that down
Yeah,
for
if you send me an email.
I needed
I'll
a
get-
thesaurus again.
being chased by a
Come here,
thesaurus.
Spot. Come here, Spot. Call the thesaurus over again.
There you go.
He comes, he comes walking back in.
So yeah, it's again, make everything, do the same stuff, the same routine is important. And then last thing again, just you know, people ask about the destructive testing again, like why is it necessary, and do OEMs even require, or you know, where do I find? Well, this is right out of OE service information. There is information on, like we talked about this morning, you know, the electrode type and the thickness. They've also got visual inspection and destructive testing criteria, what to look for, how to correct it. If you do have porosity, if you do have it's too hot, it's too cold, let's do this, let's do that. Undercut, which doesn't really happen on thin
most
material.
OEMs
but
have this.
yeah,
You just got to go look for it.
right.
Yes.
Yeah. These are, I think this may be from two different OEM. Oh, there's the same OEM here on this one, but Nissan's got it, Hyundai's got it, GM's
them
got
are
it,
similar.
Fiat Chrysler has it, Stellantis got it.
There's
So
not too many different ways to break it. I mean, I know Honda used to have like you do a couple of resistance welds and you put a wedge in there.
Yep.
They showed you how to make the wedge and you smash the wedge between there to see if it would break or not.
Yeah.
When
a
they
couple
talk about-
of the wedge tests.
When
Yeah.
they talk about a peel test, literally you weld it and you fold it back against itself a couple of times. You rip it apart.
Yeah.
Same thing with
Some
the
of them were
three-piece.
peel, and some of them are twist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of the spot welds, the more accurate one they want is the twist
Yep.
test. They do, excuse me, the peel test. They do have some that are a twist test.
Well, the one up there is a twist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they
Some-
also
and
got
then
the
some
peel,
are
the first
peel.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they'll have both. I mean, you want to do both. I mean, but once you get used to this and you get in practice yourself and accustomed to it, you're talking a small amount of time just to make sure you're going to do proper welds. It's not like, oh man, I got to waste a whole day doing this now. No. It'll take you a few minutes to get ready, and you'll be ready to go, and boom.
You're setting the welder up anyways.
Right.
You know, you've already, if you've been filing your material away or you've cut the old part off, it's not a daunting task with something
So how you
need
know
to
you're in
do.
trouble is when you use your welder and it goes zzz or whatever, and you go, wait, I better do an adjustment. Now, if you're doing that on a customer's car, you've just done some test welds on a customer's car.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
We don't wanna do that.
We just don't want to do that. So, anything else, guys?
No,
mean, it's
I think
pretty
that's it.
straightforward, right? It's
Yeah,
like
pretty straightforward.
What you need to know is same type, thickness, material, same position, same electrode, same. I mean,
Yep, every weld, every weld combination.
yep.
The only thing
Yeah.
I will say is if you go to the bathroom, if you go for lunch, if you stop working on a car and you come back to it, check before you weld, because guys have a tendency to turn the gas off
Yeah.
and turn the machine off.
Or your coworkers helping you out by turning the gas off.
So, the machine might be buzzing and making noise, or you even have your air extractors making noise, and like, oh man, he ain't welding, let me shut this off.
Yep.
And you only ran to the bathroom, you come back, oh, I shut this off, he turns the fan back on, I flick the machine back on, I go to weld, and he had turned the gas
Gas
off.
is off, yeah.
Or I went to lunch, I forgot I turned the gas off,
Yep.
my hands are a little greasy, wash your hands, clean your hands. Just go strike something before you go.
Yeah.
Another thing is always strike or practice something real quick. Maybe I'm welding aluminum. I'm in 4-stage. I need a 2-stage for this particular weld because I just did a big seam weld. I cleaned it, but now I got to do 2 plug welds. It's like, oh wait, let me check, because if you start off with that 150% more, you got an issue. So you do your test welds before you do that weld in that area, and always check, because if I'm welding around this seam and I get to an area where I got thicker material, I might have to change the setting. But otherwise, the setting stays the same.
Yeah, another concern, doesn't happen too often, but just one thing to pay attention to is, in particular like California, or even in Texas with the power thing, sometimes what they'll do is they'll brown out certain areas. They'll put
Right.
less power into the industrial areas during the night, and then during the day and back and forth. So in the morning, your welder may weld different than it's going to weld in the afternoon or during lunch. So really making sure that, what he's saying is that you step away from it and you come back, you might have a different power situation too.
Yeah. You want the same. You want everything to be the same. That's why you're doing it.
Yeah, if the lights start dimming, you might want to check to see if your welder's
You
gonna
might
work
want
right.
you might want to do that. So, well, I didn't see any questions come in. Do we have any questions, Kristen? We good over there? Nothing else coming in? Okay, awesome. We're done for the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tomorrow we got Hyundai.
Tomorrow morning, 10:30 Central Time, Hyundai collision repair procedures. And,
Which Hyundai, for a lot of people have said for years, there's no information on Hyundai.
Yep.
There actually is.
There is
So
now,
we're gonna
yeah.
show you how to get that and how to use it.
And then 1 o'clock, limitations of AI for collision repair estimating.
Yep. That should be
Should be
interesting.
an interesting one.
It'll be
Looking
very
forward to that. And then we're gonna go home after that.
Yeah?
Well, some of
Yes.
us are gonna go home.
I'm
Right?
gonna catch a plane.
Yeah.
My
So,
ducks and goats.
well, good stuff, guys.
Yeah,
Appreciate
great.
it.
Good
Sounds good.